Good evening and welcome to Wimbledon Synagogue, both people who are here and people who are watching us either live on YouTube or on playback later. So we're really thrilled tonight to have our two guests, Amnon and Tarbet, who are the co-CEOs of the Abraham Initiatives. So I didn't know very much about the Abraham Initiatives until a couple of months ago when I was on a New Israel Fund tour in Israel. And we went on a tour of Lod, which Amnon and Tarbet led. And it was an absolute eye-opener, both seeing what the situation was like in a shared city and also some of the amazing work that the Abraham Initiatives does. One of the biggest eye-openers for me was we walked past two schools. And the Jewish school was sparkling and new as if it had been put up yesterday. And the Arab school looked like it might have been 30 or 40 years old. And just that, and they were literally next door to each other. And that contrast was phenomenal. And then talking to the guys around some of the work they do and how they represent their mission to bring about equality and a properly shared society was phenomenal. So how we're going to work this evening is I'm going to hand over to Amnon in a minute, who's going to introduce the Abraham Initiatives in some more detail, and then Tarbet will give a view of the policy side of life, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. And Amnon has told me that you are fully free to ask as many challenging questions as you like. In fact, he said the more challenging, the better.
Yep.
So I'm going to hand over now to Amnon.
Good evening. Thank you very much. We are very excited to be here and thankful for the hospitality. Thank you for making the time to be with us and to hear us. So I'll say a few words or a few sentences about the work of the Abraham Initiatives, our mission, what we do and how we do it. And then Tarbet, as it was mentioned, we'll talk about current politics, the current state of affairs in Israel, which is very challenging, interesting. So we were established back in 1989, the Abraham Initiatives, as probably the first Israeli organization which was dedicated specifically for nurturing good relations based on equality between Israeli citizens, Jews and Palestinians, or Jews and Arabs, citizens of Israel. At the time, the notion or the need to establish better relations between Israelis, Jews and Arabs was new in Israel, because most people were busy thinking about the conflict between Israel and its neighbors, Israel and the Palestinians. And back then, not too many people understood the need to organize or to arrange how Jews and Arabs should share the same space, same working places, etc. within Israel. People, again, back then, 3 decades ago, understood that or thought that in the future, Israeli Arabs will become either fully Israeli, fully integrated into Israeli society, and will become Israeli, almost like Israeli Jews, or part of Jewish society, if you'd like. Or on the other hand, they will become fully Palestinians, living in Palestine as part of the Palestinian people. No one really understood that Israel is becoming a shared state, a state where there is a significant national Jewish majority, and also a significant Palestinian minority, and it needs to be arranged. And the Abraham Initiative was established then as a fully integrated organization, in the sense that 50% of our staff members are Palestinian, are Arab, and 50% are Jews. Same goes with our board in Israel. And most of the positions within the organizations are shared by Jews and Arabs. We are co-CEOs, and we have co-deputy CEOs who are in charge of our programs and initiatives, and we have co-chairmen of the board, etc., etc. We are basically a policy organization, and we see our role to think, design, incubate and execute projects on the ground that are meant to prove an argument or a theory, again, in connection to how to arrange the life of Jews and Arabs together. And our hope is that once we execute those projects and evaluate them and able to demonstrate how valuable they are, they will be picked up by the government and implemented and scaled and funded by the government and become national policy. So in a way, we are a research and development, if you like, or a startup organization, a social startup that deals with coexistence and shared society. And we call it advocacy through action. This is our main philosophy, advocacy through action, which means that whatever we advocate for, usually we carry out project action in order to make the case. And we find that it is much more effective than writing, talking, demonstrating, and classic advocacy tools. Although sometimes there is a need for demonstrations and there is a need for op-eds in the papers and there is a need for media relations and even for legal advocacy. We do also that if there is no other choice. But our first choice is to constructively engage with the government and along with the government carry out those projects that eventually will be owned by the state, by the government. And in a minute, I'll give you a number of instances, but I'll just say beforehand that we are focused on 4 main areas. The first one is education for coexistence, because of the fact that the Israeli education system is segregated. There are Jewish schooling system and an Arab schooling system, and Jewish and Arab students barely meet at all. And this is one of the root problems of the alienation between Jews and Arabs in Israel. And we always think about innovative tools or programs or methodologies, how to erode this segregation. And in this area, one example is a project that we call Shared Learning, which is based on an idea that we imported to Israel from Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland has been an inspiration for us in a number of issues, mainly policing, and education, and also power sharing in municipalities, etc. But in the area of education, in Northern Ireland, we witness the education authorities, how they bring Catholic and Protestant school kids who are studying in different schools, in separated schools, to study 1 or 2 subjects together on a weekly basis. And this way to know each other and even become friends. And we decided to give it a try in Israel, and we brought the project and we decided to focus on the subject of English, because of the fact that English is a neutral language. And if we chose to teach math or sciences or other subject, eventually the default language of teaching will be Hebrew, because Israeli Jews cannot converse in Arabic. Israeli Arabs kids know Hebrew much better, so eventually it will be Hebrew, which will give an advantage to the Jewish kids. So we said, let's do it in English, also because of the fact that the parents of the kids and the kids themselves always wants to be better in English, especially nowadays. And also the Ministry of Education in Israel was very keen on the prospect that we will help them to improve the performance of the kids in English, the academic performance. And this is why the ministry was very welcoming. And we operated this project for 5 years. And actually, those very weeks, we are ending the program, the execution on the ground, after 5 years. And we are giving it to the government. It was recognized by the Ministry of Education, even under this current government, as a very beneficial program. Of course, we evaluated the program and we measured the impact and we presented the findings also, by the way, at the Knesset, the Israeli Knesset. And the ministry said, okay, I'm willing to take it on. And from now, actually from next year, from this coming September, it will be operated by the government throughout Israel's mixed cities. So this is an example of advocacy through action. constructive engagement. So education for coexistence is one realm. A second realm of operation, narrowing gaps in services that are provided to the Arab citizens. In Israel, any service that you can imagine is provided in a better way and more accessible way and with higher quality to Jews in comparison to Arabs. Any service you can just think of, governmental, private sector, even NGO services of organizations similar to ours are provided in a better way to the Jewish population. And the most striking gap or disparity has to do with services that somehow connected with policing and security, such as the Israeli police. The policing services offered to the Arab community are extremely poor, and also fire brigades, the home front command of the army, which deals with major catastrophes and shelters, etc., and those type of services. And in those critically important services, we're focusing to work with the relevant agencies to narrow the gaps. By far, policing has been a major focus for us for almost 2 decades. I don't know how many of you will remember the October events in the year 2000, during the beginning of the Second Intifada, when there were massive clashes and riots in Israel, in which 13 Arab citizens were shot dead by the Israeli police, which was then followed by the Or Commission, which issued a report, a very thorough report, pretty much like, again, we've seen in Northern Ireland and other places, and the Stephen Lawrence riots here in London, etc., etc. And as a result, it was very clear what is the perception of the Israeli police toward the Arab citizens, that is seen more as the enemy than part of the community that needs policing services, equitable and effective. And since then, we started to work with the police. And again, Northern Ireland has been an inspiration. We led a number of serious delegation of police officers to Northern Ireland to witness the reform and the creation of the PSNI in Northern Ireland over the past forces that was very hostile toward the Catholic minority. And although in Israel since then we haven't seen a massive reform in the Israeli police, there are incremental improvements. It's not ideal, but it's better than what it was 20 or 25 years ago. So this is equal services. We are also very focused on the issue of representation and participation of the Arab minority in every realm of society, especially those places where decisions are made, from politics. We want to see the Arabs represented in a meaningful way, the Israeli Knesset, and even around government table. We want to see Arab parties part of the Israeli coalition, the Israeli government, the administration, the civil service, Israeli media, academia, corporates, government companies, and non-government sector. We want to see the Arab represented everywhere, and we are working to promote that. Last but not least, try to propose and promote ideas for shared cities and shared regions, how Jews and Arabs should share the same places, the same neighborhoods, sometimes even the same building. In Akko, you go to Akko and you see Jewish and Arab families sharing the same building block, live right next door to each other physically, but mentally they live in two separate universes. And we need to bring those people together, and we need to make sure that, again, the Arabs get equal services from the municipalities, and they get equal voice around city council table, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, this is who we are, and this is what we do, and thank you.
Thank you, Amnon. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, the whole Israeli society is passing through very challenging times. In the last few months, we saw actually tens of thousands of Israelis, mainly Jews, who are taking the streets and shouting democracy, democracy, democracy. And since the inception, or this is the formation of the new government, actually, the government came up with a series of, or I would say, a judicial reform package, which consists over 140 different bills, or I would say articles that to the Knesset, that if they are passing, actually they are going to change Israel as a whole. Israel will become more religious and less democratic, more extreme right and less liberal. So this is the big fight that taking right now. And the question, what we should do. I think that anything is happening, any change within the Israeli society will affect Arab-Jewish relations inside Israel. Arab citizens consist of 20%, 1/5 actually of the population. And any changes will hit, first of all, will be, the Arabs will pay the first price of that change. And Arab-Jewish relations are the same. We have enough of challenges. We have the conflict, the larger conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that really has implication always on Arab-Jewish relations inside Israel. I think he mentioned that we are not doing anything cross borders. We are Israelis, and we are also, I'm talking about Arab community, we are Israelis and we are Palestinians. Jews are there to stay. This is Israel, which we see it as a expression of self-determination, actually, of the Jewish people. And we would like to see also Palestinian state really formed, established alongside Israel for our people. And we are the Palestinian citizen of the state of Israel. Sometimes we are between, we see us between the rock and the hard place. So peace between our people, the Palestinians, our country, Israel, is so important for us. Well, we are not dealing anything with cross-border. I'm saying that we are dealing with Jewish and Arab citizens inside Israel. Now, Israel is a very small country in terms of geography, and it's becoming more mixed, actually. And there is no still real public policy how to build a shared society, share the future. Today we see, well, I'm not mentioning that some of the challenges that we are dealing with, but honestly, in the last decade, we see improvement in the life of the Arab citizens inside Israel. Yes, there are challenges of racism and others, but there is improvement in the life of the Arab community inside Israel. The middle class is expanding, and even some portion of it is moving to Jewish cities, looking for better life, quality of life to Jewish cities. And this is a challenge sometimes. How are you gonna really manage life inside a Jewish city when 30% of the residents, like Nofar Galil, Netzaret Alit, are Arabs? Without school, without even kindergarten, daycare, okay, without services that can be more appropriate for the Arab citizens. All in all, I would like to say that the judicial reform that really, the protest against the judicial reform that taking place right now, it's a challenge for the Arab community itself. If they are support really the protest, because they are going to pay the heaviest price if those bills are really passing. However, they are reluctant to participate in these demonstrations, since they think that can be counterproductive. It's kind of a Jewish business, okay? And maybe we should not be there, since also the agenda and the challenges that face the Arab community are not, it's not there. It's not part of the demonstrations. They are focusing, the demonstrations really focusing in democracy, the composition of the election committee, the election Committee for Judges, Supreme Court judges, and this is not enough. We believe that behind those important things like the election committee for judges, the issue of expansion of settlements, the issue of maybe annexation of some of the territories, it's important for the Arabs, should be important for some of the Jews also, should be considered, should be talked, should be in the front of the agenda. All in all, I would like to say that not a lot of Arabs are participating there, and one of our jobs we see as an organization who believe in participation and representation of the Arabs, to see Arabs there in those demonstrations. We believe the Arab political behavior nowadays, okay, will affect the turnout in the coming election, maybe 1 year, 2 years even, or 3 years from now. So this is why we are active, and we see our role to build a shared society, shared future for Arabs and Jews, and integration of the Arabs within the Israeli society, not only in the economy. We see there's a lot of successes. We see, for example, in the health system, we see Arabs are really fully integrated. Arabs, again, consist of 20% of the total population, but 24% of the doctors in Israel are Arabs, 40% of the nurses are Arabs, 50% of the pharmacists are Arabs, and which is we would like to see Arabs in all realms of society. They are citizens of the State of Israel and should be equal and should be high-tech. Would like to see them in a high-tech, would like to see them in NGOs, in the media, in the universities. All in all, we see that the life of the Arab community is improving, yet there are new challenges that we are facing, especially the issue of racism within Israeli society, and we also trying to combat racism within the Jewish community among young people, but also to eliminate prejudice among high school Arab students too. I will stop here. If there are some questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, thank you both very much. That was a fascinating overview. Before we open up to everyone else, I've got the first question because I've got the microphone. And the first question is against the backdrop of the current Israeli government and the various sets of policies they're trying to bring around. Are the two of you optimists or pessimists, both about the future of the State of Israel, but also around sort of your mission of shared society?
It's a very small question. So I'll answer a very brief answer, okay? I'm optimistic because pessimism is not a work plan. Yeah. And pessimism will not bring us anywhere. And also, I truly believe that we are more succeeding than not succeeding. And I think that it's pretty easy, you know, even if you measure only the work of the Abraham initiatives, you look back, you see that there is positive traction to what we do. Almost anything that we touch, and excuse me for not being so modest, almost in any realm, we can measure progress. Of course, the environment and what's happening in security, in many cases, you know, take us years back. But all in all, you know, if you measure over time, I think that we are, you know, there is a spiral, but it's a positive one.
Well, I can say that in principle, as a minority member, I don't have the luxury to be pessimistic, first of all. But honestly, we see the improvement of the life of Arab citizens over time. All the time there is improvement. We cannot just put it aside. Despite the challenges, despite the problems, yes, our life, even Jewish-Arab relations are improving in the personal level. We have some problems whenever there is national issue or religious issue, conflict over Jerusalem, or in the macro level, but in the daily life, just think about it, hundreds of thousands of Arabs and Jews are meeting in the public spaces, in universities, in hospitals, everywhere, okay? So I cannot say I'm really optimistic to see the future. Still, we have the small challenge having peace between my people, the Palestinian, and my country, Israel. Yeah, the small challenge. Yeah.
A small challenge.
Right, who would like to ask the first question? I'm going to pass them. Thank you, Liat.
Good evening. I mentioned to Amnon just before we came to sit down that I had the pleasure of speaking to you at a symposium that you had in London, I think in the autumn. And you said to me in the break that one of the main problems that you saw was until Israel and the Palestinians could agree on borders and where the border should be, that would be the cutoff in terms of finally reaching any real agreement. And I wondered if you could say something on that. And the other question was, is there major problems between the Christian Palestinians and the Muslim Palestinians in the same way? Well, not in the same way, but in Israel, obviously, you've got the major problem at the moment between the right-wing, ultra-religious Israelis and the left wing.
Well, I believe problems are there between different sects within Israeli society, okay? Even among Arabs. Arabs are not really cohesive, I will say, one community without the problems. There is a split. Christians are minority within the Arab minority, okay? They are making around 8% of the total population. And yeah, there are some tensions from time to time, but not something really that cannot people live together. Most of the Christians live with the Muslims in Nazareth and other places. We see around holidays, maybe it can be some tensions, but not something really that can explode or bring about explosion between Muslims and the Christians. Well, we believe that Israel was founded as an expression of self-determination for the Jewish people. We would like to see for our people, the Palestinians, have their own state, not to replace Israel, no, alongside Israel. The fact that Israel without border, I believe that no democracy without border, real border. Now, the question, which border? There is a border. There is a green line border. It's a military border. But when I'm talking about border, I'm talking about the right of the Palestinians to have their own territory, their own state, their own independent and sovereign state. And right now, what we see that Israel occupying the territories that really allocated for Palestinians to establish their states. But for now, again, we are not dealing with these issues. There are so many NGOs dealing with this issue. We are concerned, after all, as Amnon mentioned earlier, people don't know that there are 20% of the total population who are non-Jewish people, okay? And in the end of the day, peace will prevail. Peace will be between Palestinians and Israelis. The question, what we're going to do about Arab-Jewish relations inside Israel. This is why we are preparing for that now. And honestly, we believe in two-state solution. There is no other way. This is what the international community wants. But you know what? Maybe people will decide to have one state or 3 states or 4. I don't know what will happen. Maybe our model of work right now, building shared society between Jews and Arabs inside Israel, can be a model for everybody in the region even, okay? Who said that we're gonna live this way forever, okay? So yes, borders are important for every country, and the fact that there is still a conflict there, the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis have its implication in our life inside Israel.
Do you think that a two-state solution is still really a possibility? And if there were to be a two-state solution, how could you overcome the fear that there would still be threats as there are in from Gaza to Israel? What would have to be changed to make that work so there weren't those continuing tensions with the West Bank and as there is with Gaza at the moment?
Well, I believe that first of all, we have to give people hope. There is no hope in that region to stop killing, okay? And to try to say, for if you ask me, if there are enough initiatives, peace initiatives, that we're gonna go back and things stopped in the 90s after Oslo Agreement. We are not going to eliminate all hostilities and hatred and are there. So we need a process, okay, to start a process, to change rhetoric, okay? And this can give a hope, I believe. The reality on the ground is changing also, okay, in terms of more settlers within the West Bank and other places in Jerusalem. I believe that all people between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean should have, first of all, respected human rights for everybody, Arabs, Palestinians, and Jews. The Palestinians have their own problem without the Jewish people, without occupation. What's going on right now within the Palestinian Authority is very alarming also. So, I'm asking me about something that out of our what we are.
But you have your views.
This is my view. Then, you know what? Maybe we should think about two-state solution plus. Two-state solution plus. What's the plus? Think about free movement between the two countries. Okay, the two independent and sovereign countries. Think about a Jewish minority within the Palestinian state. Just the way that there is Arab Palestinian minority within the Jewish state, okay? I think the Palestinians deserve a national solution, national proud, just like the Jewish people. So, yes, but the hatred, the fear will be there for many, many years. But we have to distinguish between fear discourse and politics of fear. And there is a lot of politics of fear within Israel right now. They are trying to maximize people. Fear became a ticket for winning an election in Israel. It happened in the past. Okay, we have to consider that also.
Can I say something about the regional, again, although it's not part of our mandate, but I also have my views, which I want to share. I think that the discourse, the one-state discourse, started, as far as I see it, started almost as a tool, as a tactics, to urge the sides to progress with the two-state solution. Telling especially Israel, if you will not hurry up, if you will not make concessions, if you will not focus on solving the issue, eventually there will be one state. Yeah. So it started from as an instrumental argument, and became a leading argument for many people, despite the fact that the one-state solution, I don't know exactly what it is, but the one-state solution, the feasibility of it is by far less than still in comparison to a two-state. I believe that eventually whatever will be based on a two-state, maybe two-state plus, as Tabet says, mainly because of the fact that not Palestinians nor Israeli Jews will never give up their aspiration for self-determination and sovereignty and currency and flag and national anthem and whatever. No one, can you imagine that the Palestinians, after 100 years of struggle, or Israelis, after so many years of defending Israel, will say, oh, it's all of this is not important. We can merge into one nationless or a country without national symbols. No one will give it. The Palestinians will need to take take their sovereignty, and maybe as a second stage there can be a merge or something or confederation. But this is how I see it.
Well, one more time, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, the homeland, okay, for Jews and I believe it's a homeland for Jews and for Palestinians. There are over 10 million people today, more than that, about 14 million people, okay? 50% are Jews and 50% are Palestinians. We have to find a way to share the homeland in two states. Now, political arrangement where to curve the border here and there, it can happen. Jerusalem can be shared, okay? We have just to be creative, think about out of the box, and to think about the other side, not about myself, please.
Let me emphasize just one thing that Tabet said, and it's very important because the models and the projects of the Abraham Initiatives, our projects, will be very useful under the umbrella of any solution, either one state, two state, whatever. Our educational projects, the way we are reforming the Israeli police, the way we talk about services, and how power should be shared in municipalities. Either one state or two states are going to be mixed, and our projects will be very handy, will be very useful.
If we can turn back to the situation of Arabs within Israel, and to many outsiders, they see Israel as very one culture. There's something called an Israeli and there's an Arab. And I'm thinking there's a third substrata of Arabic speakers in Israel, which are Arabs of Jewish origin from the Mizrahi Jews. And I'm wondering, how can they act maybe as a bridge, or what is the attitude? How do they factor into this? Because they, in a sense, are a bridge to sort of Arabic-speaking culture and Israel. Has any consideration been given on that perspective and how that might advance equality and understanding?
It's a very this issue of Arab Jews or Mizrahi Jews, as they are more known in Israel. This issue, or the potential of this community to become a bridge, keeps rising every now and then on the Israeli discourse, including, by the way, within the Abraham Initiatives. One of our staff members, actually, a co-director of our lobby department, Mohan Maimoni, who is from Mizrahi origin, is very, very much deals with this issue. But I regret to say that we have been seeing that those aspirations or hopes have never realized themselves, and in fact, this part or those groups within the Mizrahi community among the Jewish community in Israel are very small. Those leftist groups are extremely small, very marginal, and their impact is close to zero. And on the other hand, we see how most of this Mizrahi community is preserving a very basic negative attitude toward, and I'm generalizing, of course, but there is a core of truth in this against a peaceful solution and against the Arab citizens. And we are trying to reach out to those communities and fight racism and teach them about the Arab community, etc. It is hard. It is hard. It is not a natural gain.
Well, I just can say, Orient, Mizrahi Jews really proud of their heritage, and now I just heard yesterday Miri Regev, the transportation minister, she's visiting Morocco, and she said, I am so proud of the culture, Moroccan culture, my culture, and she hooked herself to Morocco. Yet
Try to call her an Arab.
Yeah, Arab Jews. But in terms of politics, they are, I will say something not politically correct, Oriental Jews live in the periphery, mainly in the developmental towns. And if you look to the election results, you will see many of them, high percentage of them are voting for the right-wing parties, okay? Not only the Likud. Smotrich and Ben Gvir emerged as a second party in the Negev area, in the towns of the Negev, okay? So while they can respect the Arab culture and the Moroccan culture, yet in terms of politics, they are in the right wing.
Thank you. I've got two questions, Andrew, if I may, please. I'm very heartened to hear that you're optimists. I think possibly I tend the other way. So my questions are really about the here and now in Israel. I mean, how far do you feel that Israeli liberals see Netanyahu's coalition as an existential threat to internal relations between Arabs and the Jewish population? I say this partly because of the focus on democracy and also, you know, a concern. This is also in conversations with my own family in Israel. You know, it's about the ultra-conservatives impinging on women's rights and so forth. But their main preoccupation isn't really that Gvir and, you know, the other ultra-conservative coalition or ultra-right-wing coalition members are actually creating a tinderbox for internal relations because of how they're likely to behave in the West Bank and so on. So that's one question. You know, how far do you think the people out there every Saturday night actually are looking after their own interests primarily and not kind of thinking forward as to where this could all end? That was pessimistic question number one. And pessimistic question number two is, again, your remarks about economic improvement in jobs, particularly in the health sector, is very, very heartening. And I can recall years ago, you know, 20, 30 years ago, when sort of there were far more commercial interactions between the Jewish and the Israeli Arab communities, but it feels to me latterly that had vanished. But the budget settlement that Netanyahu seems to have come to hang on to the coalition is that he's flinging vast sums of money at ultra-Orthodox education. And again, that's going to have ramifications for years as to, you know, the education budget, let's say, for the kind of initiatives you're pursuing. So again, you know, am I wrong to be pessimistic?
My view is that it's wrong to be pessimistic, but it is not wrong to be realistic and to recognize the dangers. And I think that you are recognizing the dangers, but again, pessimism is not, you know, as I said, it's not a work plan. I think that what we're seeing in Israel at the moment, the judicial coup, is an existential threat for Israeli society or for liberal Israeli society, and it's not a joke. There is a war going on in Israel. It is not a war of guns and cannons and tanks and jet planes, but it's a real war about the future, about the DNA of Israeli society. And if we lose this war, we are not interested in this country anymore. We will not be able to live in Israel anymore. And when I say we, that means Israeli, by the way, Israeli Arab citizens, Palestinians, and Israeli Jews who are liberal, who hold liberal values. We will find it almost impossible to survive in Israel. Maybe in small enclaves or something, but it's going to be very, very hard. I'm not sure who will be interested in continue living in Israel. Maybe Israeli Arabs. I'm not sure about my community. And this is why we need to win this war. And this is why people will continue to storm the streets until the threat is over. No one is giving away. And the problem of Netanyahu is that he were under the impression that for some reason, you know, everything worked for him so far because he's a magician. But he was messing with the wrong population, because the people who run this thing are not people on the margins. They are the leaders of the Israeli army and security agencies and high tech and traditional industry and the planners and the lawyers and the workers associations, etc., unions, etc., etc. And if he will keep trying to do this, the state will stop functioning. No, you will not see an airplane in the air. Okay, the state will stop functioning. As simple as that. No schools, no universities, no airports, no hospitals, nothing. And Netanyahu understands now the limit of power. And the fact that 64 votes in the Knesset is, may be seen as the legitimate majority, but it is not enough. You need to have the backing of the people. You need to have some logic behind it. And this is why I think that, at the end of the day, it's not going to pass. This is my view.
Well, I would like to agree with Amnon and to tell you the fact that the right wing right now has 64 lawmakers, 64 seats out of 120 doesn't mean they have the majority. The majority in the streets, and the streets against the judicial reforms. And all polls right now showing that the left and the center and part of the right wing even, Russians and Lieberman and others, they have the majority. If there is an election next week, we will see that this government will not have this majority. Okay, Arabs will will turn their votes in higher percentages. In any case, I would like to tell you there's so much energy in the streets that will not allow Netanyahu to do whatever he wants to do. This is going to be different Israel. I don't know where Netanyahu and the 3-4 partners in that extreme government will take Israel. Okay, we said nothing about the international community, the friends of Israel, your country, Germany, United States, and the pressure. The series of laws, the bills that they are introducing, it's anti-liberal, anti-Israel, anti-Jew, I will say. Increasing taxation on the NGOs, for example. You ask about the Arabs. Well, can you imagine now they're going to fulfill or to implement the so-called nation-state law, okay? Article 7 in nation-state laws talking about developing Israel for its Jewish people. Well, what about me? I am an Arab. I am a citizen just like him, okay? Think about the other day, the Minister of Justice stating that, well, middle-class Arabs are moving to Jewish cities, and this is why Jews are fleeing the Jewish cities.
It happened in the Knesset last week.
Yes. Can you imagine that? A Minister of Justice in your country here say, well, Jews are coming to London, and Christians are to Wimbledon, and this is why British people are leaving. Okay, you probably will label me as anti-Semitic, and you're right. It's anti-Semitic statement. There will say it's a racist statement. Okay, so this judicial reform, it's a danger for Jews, for Arabs, for Israel, and for Arab-Jewish relations too.
I also have an observation and a question, and another question. And this is relating back to Mizrahi Jews, or Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. I'm married to one, and if I look at her family and their friends and their neighbors and so on, it's very largely a generational thing. Those who came to Israel in the 1950s were generally solidly Mapai, so sort of center-left, and it was the successful seduction by Begin and his followers, reminding them that not a lot had been done for them. So is it not possible that the next generation, which was seduced away in that fashion, could be encouraged back if the left didn't now write them off and tend to ignore them? The other question is more specific and relates to the police. From my much more limited knowledge, it's obviously true that one of the biggest failures at the moment in the Arab sector in Israel is the lack of policing, which is I know extremely. One of my son's best friends is an Arab from one of the villages near the Green Line, and his biggest fear is the fact that his village is becoming prey to crime in a way that wouldn't be tolerated in any Jewish neighborhood. But presumably that can't be improved without better recruitment within the Arab population to the police force, because I imagine that it will be unpopular for Arab neighborhoods that are not mixed to be policed by Jewish policemen, and equally likely to be unpopular in Jewish neighborhoods if they were policed by Arab policemen, but there's much less chance of that because there are far fewer Arab police.
I can give a lecture about policing in Israel for a couple of hours, but I'll try. You said many things. I'll try to be very, to limit myself. First of all, I think that the issue of violence and crime, yes, is the #1 concern today, and the murder rate percentage is going. It's very, very high. Actually, if you compare the first 5 months of this year, the number is tripled itself in comparison to the same period of last year. But basically, this phenomenon of violence and crime is a manifestation not only of severe under-policing, and that the police don't care about what is happening within the Arab society, but also neglect and underdevelopment in every aspect of society. There isn't any one government ministry that is not responsible for this neglect, from housing to sports to our recreation, infrastructures, transportation, employment, etc., etc. This discrimination over so many decades, over so many years, is manifested in this phenomenon, but also under-policing. Under-policing on one hand, when it comes to violence within the Arab community, and over-policing, excessive use of force, when the Arabs are perceived as a threat to the public order. And also the fact that, again, in Israel, the police is seen as part of the security establishment. Until the 80s of the last century, the Israeli police was a classic police, chasing criminals and working around crime, and Arabs were part of the police, were part of the police, but they started leaving the police once the government assigned the police with security tasks at the beginning of the first Intifada. Okay, and it was, as I said, it was manifested in a very clear way in the October events of the year 2000. Now, we see a very high percentage of Arab policemen at the Israeli border police. That does make the border police more compassionate toward the Arab citizens? Not at all. The border police in Israel is very brutal when it comes to the Arab citizens, which tells us basically that the percentage of Arabs in the service is not a key factor. The key factor is the attitude and culture of the police, and not who is doing what. You know, you said something about who should police in the Arab communities and the Jewish communities. There are not many Arab policemen in the Israeli police, about 3%. Most of them serve in Jewish communities. There isn't any problem. No problem whatsoever. Again, it doesn't matter. The identity of the policeman, of the police officer, doesn't matter. What matters is the attitude. And the attitude of the Israeli police is that Arabs are not, as I said, part of the enemy. And Jews, the police see them as clients. It work to serve and protect them. And this is why we're working to reform the police.
Regarding your observation, I am the Arab. I would like to say something about Oriental Jews. Yes, you are right. The Labour Party did a lot of mistakes in the 50s and the 60s. And this is why they lost so much among the Oriental Jews. But let's face it, we are 75 years after the inception of the state. The Labour Party did a lot of mistakes with us, We are the Arabs under military government for 20 years almost. Okay, so we cannot go back and see, but what is going on within the Israeli society, it's a lot of incitement. As I said, people are, it's because of elections, it's a winning ticket. When Netanyahu is whispering to one rabbis, oh, they forgot what's Jew all about. They are not true Jews. Netanyahu is saying that about the Ashkenazi or the left or center. So, yes, this is the major problem today, especially after the immigration of the Russians and the former Soviet Union countries, people, we see there's a lot of mix within the Jewish community, okay? Should ease, actually, tensions among different groups. We see these tensions rising, especially before the election, okay? And Netanyahu is very sophisticated politicians. He knows how to use incitement in favor of the right wing. Unfortunately, this is my observation. But we are not saying anything about our work, by the way. Yeah.
If you can hear me, 2 points really. Firstly, it's great to hear about the work you're doing, but it's horrifying that it has to be done. You know, there should be, at least I guess in my view, equal rights for citizens of Israel, whatever their religious beliefs or background. Given that, I wonder whether you see an inconsistency between the work that you're doing to try and bring equality between citizens of Israel and what seems to be, as I've understood it, both of your support for a two-state solution. It seems to me the history of splitting up mixed communities into individual states, be that Greece and Turkey or Indian partition, is absolutely horrendous. And it seems to me that were there a two-state solution, the pressure on Israeli Arabs only to be seen as Arabs or Palestinians and to be pushed out of what would suddenly not be seen as their state would be enormous. And there are very few states that define themselves by religion that do not discriminate against the minorities. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
So I think that the bottom line is that the ultimate goal of the Abraham Initiative is to make Israeli Palestinians or Israeli Arabs equally welcomed and at home in Israel, to make Israel a perfect home for all of its citizens, Israeli Arabs, and to totally reject the idea of a separation on an ethnic basis. It will never happen. And I know enough Israeli Jews who will willing to go to war if needed to defend the right of all Israelis to remain in Israel. So yeah.
Well, first of all, the two-state solution, it's an international community solution that's suggested by international community. The majority of the Israelis, the majority of Palestinians in favor of this solution. This is first of all. What's the alternative? If it's not two-state solutions, we would like to see both people, Israelis, Jews, and Palestinians have the right for self-determination. They have the same rights. This goes back to 1947 partition plan. So I think without giving the same rights to the same people will not advance. First of all, Israel was established as a self-determination for the Jewish people. Great. The Jews are there to stay. Israel is there forever. The question, what about the Palestinians? Where the Palestinians can live? Ask about Israeli friends all over the world, Americans, Britain, everywhere. This is the absolute and the right solution. We can play with the border. I'm a political geographer. I like to curve the border here and there and solve problems, okay? If there is a goodwill, I believe that this issue can be solved, okay? But to talk about having a Jewish state with 50% Palestinians, it's not going to work, okay? It's not going to be a Jewish state. Think about other name for that state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, as Ben-Gvir and Smotrich wants. What do you suggest?
You have described social unrest, which you're trying to, inequality, social inequality, which you're trying to address. Jewish people aren't going anywhere. Palestinian people aren't going anywhere. Both sides need to recognize that, and there needs to be a political resolution underpinning that. My question is about outside parties' interference and how that affects things. And my example would be, in 2001, there was the UN Durban conference where Amnesty signed the apartheid Israel motion, which was in the midst of some very extreme anti-Semitism, which the American delegate, Tom Lantos, who was a Holocaust survivor, described as the worst anti-Semitism he'd seen since Nazi Germany. Now, more recently, Amnesty resurrected this report, which I believe the Amnesty director of the region wasn't happy with. I know that the Islamist MK said it was unhelpful, and subsequently Amnesty embarrassed themselves with a Ukraine report as well. So my question is, exactly how unhelpful are these interferences?
Or helpful.
Or helpful.
So,
Indeed.
can I try to? Yeah. So there is anti-Semitism. I think that we need to recognize it. There is anti-Semitism, and many of the arguments in many instances against Israel are, they smell of anti-Semitism, and they feel like anti-Semitism, and they are anti-Semitism. But it doesn't mean that criticism of Israel is not justified when it's due, when there is a need to criticize the state of Israel, and I need that it's very hard in many cases to make the differentiation, to distinct and to call anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, and to call legitimate criticism, legitimate criticism. I find it easier to, and more constructive, by the way, helpful, in other words, when Israel is criticized by parties, by stakeholders that truly care about Israel. I think that friendships sometimes are manifested in constructive criticism, although it can be harsh, it can be hard to hear. But nevertheless, I think that when criticism comes from Germany or Britain or the US or Scandinavia or other friend countries of Israel, we should take it into account. And whenever, and only yesterday we heard some criticism coming from the Vice President of the US on what is happening in Israel in terms of the judicial reform. And the response from the Israeli Foreign Minister was insulting. He insulted in a very explicit way the Vice President of the United States. And this is like shooting ourselves in the leg. This is utterly stupid, I think. And most Israelis will agree with me. So yes, there is anti-Semitism. There is sometimes constructive criticism of Israel. I think that Durban, there was anti-Semitism, I think, involved in the consideration, in the motivation for the Durban Declaration. I thoroughly read and analyzed the latest Amnesty report and the report describing the situation as apartheid in Israel. And I'm telling you that most of the arguments that appear in this report are hard to defute. Most of the arguments are solid and are rooted in the reality on the ground. I regret to say, but this is true.
Well, nobody is perfect. Neither Israel, nor the Palestinian Authority, nor America, nor Britain. we should be able to criticize Israel. When I'm talking about Israel, I'm talking about Israeli policy, not the state itself, not the Jewish people, okay? I'm very critical of the Palestinian people too, okay? I think they are making a lot of mistakes. The other day, somebody asked me about, what do you think about possible relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia? I said, well, I have not only Israeli glasses, I have Palestinian glasses, Arab, Muslim glasses, and I look to reality in different ways. Yes, I am happy to see Israel having good relationship with all Arab countries, but I cannot help it. I have to mention also to you, I am really embarrassed by this kind of relationship when I see that Israel is having a relationship, will have a relationship with the most bloody dictatorship regime in the world, Saudi Arabia. Okay? I have to say that. Okay? The same, when we talk about Arab regimes or dictatorship regimes, I have to think about the Saudi people, the people of United Arab Emirates, the Egyptian people, not only about the regime itself. Yet, I really would like to see my country and my people, the Arab people, have good relations. But maybe we have to help them, okay? Not to talk only about strategic work and against Iran, which is definitely, I can understand this kind of relationship between United Arab Emirates and Israel, Saudi Arabia and Israel, but yet we have to look inside the people. I would like to see peace, grassroots peace, good relations between Jewish people in Israel and the Saudi people, not only in the among regimes. So I'm very critical of Saudi Arabian regime, and I'm writing articles about that. So that's fine. We are criticizing Israel because we want Israel to be better country, better people, okay? Better policy. And this is our country, this is our state. We would like to, in Israel, there is discrimination against Arab minority. Yet, I mentioned already talked about health system and the integration of the Arabs. We have a half glass of water full in Israel. We have to fill the other half, which is fine with that, okay? Nothing wrong with that to criticize Netanyahu or the Minister of Justice and his statement, racist statement against the Arabs who are moving to Jewish cities. So I think healthy society will allow always criticism, and nobody should be afraid of that.
I want to shift tone a little bit, I loved hearing stories about how you were learning from Northern Ireland, and I wanted to ask what you think have been some of your most successful programs that you could share with others.
Sorry, I didn't.
Your most successful programs working with communities, and what lessons could be shared with other countries around the world.
So again, looking at the Northern Ireland model, Northern Ireland has been an inspiration for us. We realize that the situation, is not perfect. It's not that Northern Ireland is totally, post-conflict, and when after a pint or two in the pub in in Belfast, when you talk to people, you discover that, their basic aspirations are still in place on both sides. So it's not that people forgot where they come from, and history is not totally erased. But nevertheless, there is a political arrangement which allow a peaceful situation, to continue. And so again, when it comes to policing, I think that the reform that took place in Northern Ireland in terms of the police, and it goes, from the equipment of the police, their attitude, even the name and symbols, the recruitment, the 50-50 aspiration within the police, the fact, and this is something that we took back to Israel and introduced, and it is implemented, this process which is called the DPPs, what it stands for, those meetings between community and police, where the police is accountable and there is a dialogue at eye level between police officers and the community they serve. In Israel, until a decade ago, it was unthinkable that the police will sit with citizens and answer questions and be accountable. Who's counting? Who's counting those citizens? We report to our commanders. We don't owe anything to the community. This is the perception in Israel, or was the perception. And if the police felt that they need to make arrests in a village or in a town in Israel, by the way, also Jewish, the mayor is probably the last person to know about it. Who's the mayor? We own explanation to our commanders. Now it is changed, and it is changed because of the Northern Ireland perception and model that was brought to Israel. And today we operate those dialogue groups between, we call it station community partnerships, which we bring the police commander and the senior staff of the police to have a dialogue with the community, with the mayor, deputy mayor, and people who represent the community. Then they can lay out their concerns and expectations, etc. And it is very constructive. It builds trust. So this is one thing. I mentioned education, and also the fact that in municipalities in Northern Ireland, mainly Belfast, but not only Belfast, there are units, departments within the municipality which are responsible for the issue of equality and good relations. And this is something that we took from Northern Ireland, and right now we're experimenting with that in Israel, and we are actually placing Abraham Initiative staff members in mixed regions to establish those departments. And again, as an experiment, with the hope that eventually the government will adopt it and set those positions as statutory. It will be compulsory.
Could you please expand on that? What I'm interested to know is the grassroots activities of the Abraham Initiatives. I understand the point you just made, but I'm really burning to know what your USP is.
US?
The unique selling point. The
selling point.
Selling points.
Our selling point to funders or to the government?
To what the Abraham Initiatives' most successful operations have been and are continue to be over the 30 years. What are the biggest things you like to push that initiatives are achieving?
So I would say that...
You just described one, but...
Yeah, so I would say that right now the top priority, I think that Tabet spoke about racism among youth. This is our top priority at the moment, and we have been watching with horror how Israeli youth and first-time voters, Jews and Arabs, are going to the extremes. Jews are voting for the extreme right, Arabs are voting for the most extremist Arab parties, nationalistic Arab parties, and this is bad news, and we are trying to fight it by educating against racism and knowing the other community, the narrative, the language, the heritage, to simply know the other community. And we have an intervention which is very important in high schools in Israel, both Jewish and Arab high schools, but also I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's called pre-military or pre-army academies in Israel, Mechinot Kdam Tzvayot. There is this, in Israel there is this trend of gap year between high school and army service. And in this gap year for Jews, because Jews then joined the army a year later, in those academies, a very carefully selected group of youngsters are trained for a year for leadership and to simply become better citizens. Those are the pre-military academies. And because of the fact that those people will become leaders in the army and eventually in business and in the government and media and academia, etc., the investment in them is very cost effective, and we are focusing now on trying to expand our work in those pre-military academy. Again, it has nothing to do with the military, but only because of the fact that it's before the army service, it's called pre-military. But we are trying to reach out more of those academies and offer a unique curriculum which teaches about the Arab community. It's very important.
Can I ask a question?
You can.
In fact, I have two questions. One of them is, well, everything that you're doing deserves respect, that's for sure. My question is, I believe that your work doesn't only involve creating good relations or establishing equality or creating an environment for coexistence just for Palestinians, for other Arab communities as well, for example, Druze. What is your relationship with them? Or do you think the Druze community have already achieved good relations with the State of Israel? And what might be the reason for this positive relations? And could you model or could you understand and maybe adopt the same approach when you are working on relations between Jews and Palestinian Arabs? This is my first question. The second question is that the biggest and most damaging accusation that the State of Israel faces day in, day out is being an apartheid state. Is Israel an apartheid state? If you say yes, which criteria do you think they fit in? If you say no, why do you think it's not?
You ask for challenging questions.
The A word is a tough question. No, Israel is not an apartheid state. The reality in the occupied territories is a reality of apartheid, not in Israel proper. In Israel proper, the situation cannot be described as apartheid. By the way, apartheid is not an endemic phenomenon. Nowadays, it's considered not an endemic phenomenon associated only with South Africa of the 80s and 70s, etc. But apartheid can be something outside of the South African context. But yes, not in Israel. In Israel, Israeli-Palestinian citizens have the right to vote and be elected, freedom of movement, almost equal rights before the law, under the law, almost I say, because the nation-state law was the first time where a legal construction was laid and approved that can pave the way for what could lead to an apartheid situation inside of Israel, the nation-state law, but not so far. And I hope that it will be revoked, and I hope that it will not be realized, that the harmful potential of the nation-state law will not be realized. So this is my answer in regard to apartheid.
Yeah, I just would like to answer the issue about the Druze, but again, how the Israeli regime can be apartheid if just last year the Islamic Movement Party was part of the government, part of the coalition.
The only Islamic party in the Middle East was part of the government.
Yeah. You see, we are very critical. We are very critical of the Israeli government policy. But think about that. The only Islamic movement active in the Middle East and they have the ability to be active, it's in Israel, neither in Egypt, nor in Jordan, nor in Syria, nor in Saudi Arabia. So we cannot say really it's an apartheid. It's far from being apartheid inside Israel. I'm not just explain about the territories. The Druze are a minority, just like the Christians, minority within the minority. They are making up 9% of the total Arab citizens. They are Arabs just because their mother tongue is Arabic language. There is no Druze language, Arabic. They are speaking Arabic, yet they are ethno-religious group, a group that really, ethnic group that rely on religion, not in linguistics. Now, the Druze consider themselves, okay? They are not talking about being Palestinians. They are talking about being Arabs, Israelis, but most of them would say, I am a Druze. They are trying to more and more to put their identity up there, Druze. Yet we consider, the majority of the Arabs consider them, and they consider themselves sometimes, we are Arabs in terms of rights. We are getting the same rights like the Arabs, but we are true Israelis in terms of duties. We are serving Israeli armies. Yet the nation state law that Amnon just mentioned, it's against the Jews. They are frustrated now, and they are demanding to cancel this law, because again, the law is talking about developing the country, okay, for its Jewish citizens. We are Druze, they say. We are not Jewish people. What about us? We are serving Israeli army. We are just doing everything for the success of this country. How come we are discriminated against? And there is a series of laws, just like the nation state laws, that consider the Druze people as the other people, others. They are not Jews. So it's a problem. All in all, you ask about Christians and tensions. I believe there are some tensions between the Druze and the Muslims in Israel because of the serving Israeli army.
We've got time for one last question.
Good evening. My name is Ray Wixman. I'm a member of an interfaith group which goes into primary schools. And we try to give an educational assembly, not devotional, but we try to convey our message of mutual respect, unity in diversity. So there is a Christian, Muslim, a Jew, me, a Hindu, and a Baha'i. And we give our program. It seems to be very popular amongst the children, in particular because we've introduced a genetic aspect as well. There is a program on YouTube which features people being shown their descendants from all parts of the world. And it creates a lot of surprises, and this seems to get through to children, and they seem to like it. I think that children of this age, of 7 to 11 years old, can be particularly influenced on the way they perceive other children from different faiths and different traditions. I wonder if there is anything similar in Israel. I realize that the tensions are probably much greater than in the UK, but I wonder if there is anything similar.
Yeah, I'll answer very briefly. The most, maybe our largest project ever was teaching teaching Arabic, a project called Ya Salam, teaching spoken Arabic to fifth and sixth grade. That's the youngest age group, which was our target audience. Teaching spoken Arabic language and culture by Arab teachers in Jewish schools, and the aim was to demonstrate to the Ministry of Education that Arabic language can actually be effectively taught in the schooling system, but also that by teaching the language and the culture by people who speak the language, the native speakers of the language, we were managing to change the attitudes of the pupils, of the kids toward the Arab citizens. And we've managed to prove it. We measured it over time. We executed this project in 220 schools over 10 years until the Ministry of Education did not have any other choice but to be convinced that this is the way to go, and they have adopted it. So yes, this is my... Thank you very much.
So, thank you. I mentioned in my introduction that I'd been on this tour of Israel, and it was I was there right at the sort of heat of the battles over the judicial reforms at that time. And everyone from the UK I met when I said I was going to Israel, or when I've said I'd just been from Israel, was saying, well, what a terrible time to go, and how awful it was over there at the moment. And my response and my view, which has been reaffirmed tonight, is that I'm an optimist about the future, because there are people like Amnon and Tarbet and their organisation who are fighting the good fight. And I think on behalf of all of us, we're incredibly grateful that you've squeezed us into a jam-packed... I know that Katie's had you run all over London over the last few days, so we're incredibly grateful that you made it south to see us.
Thank you. Thank
And I think we've learned a huge amount tonight, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you should all know Katie, who's sitting here, and she's in charge of our UK operation. So be in touch with Katie. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was super.